Welcome back. Today we're jumping right into one of the most brutal, fascinating, and honestly game-changing eras in Indian history. We're talking about a 300-year literal bloodbath over the subcontinent's absolute most coveted prize, the throne of the Delhi Sultanate. Over 50 different rulers sat on this throne, and let me tell you, they didn't just inherit power, they shed serious blood for it. Let's get right into this explainer.
Think about it for a second. Why would a son actually assassinate his own flesh and blood just to wear a crown? It sounds like absolute madness, right? Well, betrayal and extreme violence were practically job requirements for ruling Delhi during this time. To really grasp why this throne was constantly soaked in blood, we have to look closely at the people who fought tooth and nail for it.
So here's our roadmap. We are going to blitz through 5 distinct dynasties. We start off with the Mamluks in 1206, shift over to the terrifying Khaljis, move to the wildly eccentric Tughlaqs, pass through the surviving Sayyids, and finally end with the Lodis before the whole thing crashes down in 1526. 5 dynasties. Countless assassinations.
Chapter 1. The Mamluk Dynasty, From Slaves to Sultans. This whole wild ride officially kicks off in 1206. An incredibly loyal slave named Qutbuddin Aybek actually takes the throne. And Aybak, he was a fascinating paradox. He was fiercely generous. People actually called him Lak Baksh because he just gave away massive amounts of wealth. Plus, he laid the foundation for the iconic Qutb Minar. But get this, his reign only lasted 4 years, and it ended in the most bizarre way. He literally fell off his horse playing polo and died, just like that.
Okay, so his successor, Iltutmish, steps up, locks down the empire, and officially shifts the center of power over to Delhi. He even manages to fight off Genghis Khan. But the real drama, that starts after his death. The throne goes to his daughter, Razia Sultana. She was the first and actually the only female sultan of Delhi, but tragically, simply for being a woman in power, she faced massive, fatal pushback. Her reign lasted just 4 years before she was violently overthrown by her own brother.
Eventually, all that chaos gets silenced by Ghiyas-ud-Din Balban around 1266. And Balban, he didn't just want to rule, the man demanded to be feared. He deployed this incredibly deadly spy system and literally declared himself Zil-e-Ilahi, the shadow of God on earth. He ruled with an absolute iron fist for 21 years, but shortly after his death, his descendants were wiped out in a violent succession. The Mamluk dynasty was officially over.
Chapter 2. The Khalji Rule, Blood and Massive Expansion.
So, the Khalji dynasty actually starts with Jalaluddin Khalji, who was considered a pretty honorable guy. But then, in 1296, in a brutal, straight-out-of Game of Thrones-style betrayal, Jalaluddin's own son-in-law, and nephew, by the way, Alauddin Khalji, assassinates him to seize the crown. Alauddin basically believed that karma was a total myth and that raw power was the only truth. He took the throne literally dripping in his own family's blood. Now, Alauddin's legacy is a real mixed bag. It's a total duality. On one hand, you've got this ruthless conqueror forcing his will, expanding the empire massively, and having his general loot the world-famous Kohinoor diamond. But then, on the flip side, he was a highly effective administrator. He strictly controlled market prices to keep everyday goods affordable, and he brutally repelled multiple Mongol invasions. He was undoubtedly a tyrant, but he was a tyrant who got results. But you know the drill with the Delhi Sultanate by now. Power just doesn't last. Alauddin dies, quite possibly assassinated by his own favorite general. Soon after, Alauddin's son Qutbuddin Mubarak Shah takes over. And wow, this guy was a total disaster. He spent his entire reign completely drunk, acting incredibly erratically. Recognizing his total incompetence, his own general Khusro Khan violently assassinated him. Just like that, the Khalji dynasty went up in smoke.
Chapter 3. The Tughlaq Dynasty. A 90-year era defined by pure eccentricity and total ruin.
This era is famous for its absolute wildest ruler, Muhammad bin Tughlaq. This guy had ideas that on paper sounded like pure genius, but the reality, absolute disasters. First, he orders the entire population to just pack up and migrate hundreds of miles to hide from the Mongols. The result? Horrific mass deaths and Delhi left completely vulnerable. Then, to save a buck, he introduces brass and copper coins, and what happens? Citizens just start counterfeiting money in their living rooms, completely destroying the economy.
His brilliant ideas basically plunged a thriving empire straight into poverty. When he finally passed away, a famous historian summed it up so perfectly, saying, "The Sultan was freed from the people and the people from the Sultan." You can practically feel the mutual sigh of relief. Even though his successor tried to repair the damage by building hospitals and new cities, the dynasty itself was already fundamentally broken.
And then comes the absolute killing blow. The year is 1398, and the terrifying conqueror Timur invades. The Tughlaq ruler at the time literally just runs away in terror. In just 5 days, Timur's forces massacre roughly 200,000 people in Delhi. The city was completely devastated, stripped of its wealth, and left in ruins. Timur didn't even want to stay. He just handed control over to a governor and left. It would take Delhi almost a full century to recover from that horrific trauma.
Chapter 4. Following Timur's attack, the Sultanate limps along under the incredibly weak Sayyid dynasty. But let's move right into our final chapter, the Lodis and the arrival of the Mughals.
Now, the Lodis did bring a little bit of stability at first. Sikandar Lodi actually founded the beautiful city of Agra and moved the capital there. But his son, Ibrahim Lodi, totally different story. Ibrahim was incredibly toxic, massively arrogant, and ridiculously paranoid. He'd execute his own ministers purely on a hunch. His behavior was so erratic, and he was so deeply hated that his own inner circle committed the ultimate treason. They literally sent an invitation to a ruler in Kabul named Babur, practically begging him to invade India and overthrow Ibrahim.
That single invitation completely sealed their fate. The year is 1526. Babur marches his armies into India and absolutely crushes Ibrahim Lodi at the First Battle of Panipat. With that one clash, the sun finally sets on over 300 years of the Delhi Sultanate, and the mighty Mughal Empire is officially born.
So we have to step back and ask, why all this bloodshed? Why literally kill your own family members just to sit on this specific throne? Well, because Delhi wasn't just a city. It was the ultimate commercial and strategic jackpot. Think of it as the Wall Street and Washington, D.C. of the subcontinent all rolled into one. Controlling its wealth and its geography meant holding the master key to all the surrounding states. It was the absolute center of gravity for power in India.
This whole Sultanate era really proves that power is a brutal, double-edged sword, and the throne of Delhi demanded a massive price in blood. But as we know, history never really stops moving. With Babur's victory, the Mughals have arrived, so it leaves us with a huge question. Will this incoming Mughal empire finally bring some long-awaited peace to the subcontinent, or are we just turning the page to a whole new era of brutal bloodshed for the throne? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I'll see you in the next one.